Well, hello there, and welcome to the kitchen of the dollhouse for another reading from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and you Stelfers for February 16th, the day of animation. And here at the top of the page is a visual representational image of the day of animation. We have us an image of, this one's a little bit interesting here. It's a gnarly looking fox, I would say, atop a Victorian steampunk looking, or steampunk rather, looking treadmill. Does that speak to the day of animation? I would say not really, but who's to say? Sometimes these things are a little bit enigmatic. Interesting nonetheless. But doesn't necessarily have to speak to the day. I just like to kind of let you see what's going on off screen here on the page for me. That said, what is important today is it's February 16th, and so if your birthday's February 16th, wishing you a happy birthday. That's what's important. But if this video finds you late, I don't know, days, weeks, months, whatever the case may be, well, I just want to say I hope you had a happy birthday, if that happens to be the circumstance. But for everybody else who's joining us randomly or more ideally to celebrate the February 16th birthday, I just want to say hello, welcome, and I hope you enjoy yourself. Now, before I dive in with the redirect, something I like to do around these here parts, and that is roll some dice. That's right. This is the DykASSt birthday broadcast, so I like to live up to the namesake, but I do so more importantly for synchronicity's sake. And here I rolled us a 6 and a 3 for a 9. Now, what is synchronicity, you're probably wondering? Well, a lot of times, as I've heard it told, the universe will put things in our path to help us realize our goals or manifest our aspirations. But oftentimes we're getting out in the world, we're very narrow or singular of focus. So we got the blinders on to a lot of the things going on around us. So we might not just be apt to necessarily notice the things the universe is putting in our path. So this is a bit of an exercise to help us get those blinders off and start picking up on those things, if you like. And we do so by, that's right, looking for a sign we can't help but recognize. Your daily numbers. Now, you don't have to go with the numbers I rolled for you. The intention is there, but it's probably advisable you get your own set of dice. You can ascribe directional values to number sets and time limits with which to go in those directions if this is something you want to try exercising. That's right. How do you exercise it? Well, you just find a place near and dear to your heart, or maybe a place you haven't explored before. Let's say downtown area, all right? And so you get out there, down the town square, perhaps downtown. It's usually downtown, right? And in any event, you just kind of pick your direction that you've established there and your time with which to go in it, and you get off there. But like I said, take those blinders off and start soaking up everything around you like a sponge, because you never know, the day might start to take on some kind of a theme. Take the visual representational image, for instance. Maybe you just so happen to notice foxes everywhere, and it might not necessarily be a real fox. It could be, fox tails hanging at some kind of commemorative store or some such, or maybe stickers of a fox on the side of a transformer box, or maybe just something in an advertisement or on a bus bench, say, a mural on the side of a building. All such things are examples I like to throw out. But that's just kind of help you see that the universe is showing you, hey, you're on the right path, or it's with you on your journey. That said, to get off after this first leg of your journey, hey, maybe you're not seeing anything. That's all right. Don't get dissuaded. Just kind of keep going in stride. All right. Maybe at the end of your time value, you just so happen to notice you're in front of one of those buildings that have the big barriers in front of it. Like maybe you just happen to be in front of a locked gate, per se, a big lock on that thing. Well, it seems like the universe is trying to tell you there's nothing for you here, right? Well, maybe so. So roll yourself another directional value and time limit and set off. Maybe once and again you reach the end of your time limit, you're not really seeing much of anything. But you know what? Just take a step back, take it in stride, look around, maybe look for something small. That's right. Sometimes the little things are apt to pass us by if we're not looking for them. Maybe you might just so happen to be on old 63rd Street or 9th Avenue. Who's to say? I would take that as an example. You're on the right path. So roll yourself some more directions, time values, set off again. Maybe once again you find yourself in front of, what's this? A locked gate in front of one of those buildings, those big construction barriers that don't let you see in. Kind of frustrating, right? Well, again, when you just maybe take it in stride, you bend down to roll yourself another time value, and what's this? You hear a little jangle, right? And you look over, and maybe somebody is just coming out of that building. They open the gates up, and what's this you see? Oh, maybe it's a building you're not too particularly fond of. Maybe it's like the old IRS building, and you got a little bit of contempt in your heart for the IRS. Maybe back in your past, your dad had declared bankruptcy because they went and audited him, and you found that he hadn't paid them back taxes on something because they adjusted the books in the wrong way. So he had to abandon the business, and maybe it just didn't set your family down the right path. So yeah, you'd like to see that building go away. So in any event, the individual coming out of the building, got the construction hat on, all this stuff, asks you what you're doing. Hey, you know what? In instances where people kind of confront you or maybe inquire as to why you're rolling dice or what you're up to, hey, you know what? Just tell them, be transparent about what you're doing. Oh, it's my birthday. I'm out here on a synchronicity walk trying to see what the universe has in store for me. And they're like, what are you talking about? Show them your dice, maybe show them this video. And as I often like to find, they might be up to say, that's crazy. And you're like, yeah, I know. It's just, I want to get out here and shake things up. They go, well, yeah, that's crazy too. But I mean, what's really crazy is it's my birthday too. That's right. I know it sounds a little bit harebrained or out in the weeds, but sometimes these kinds of things come together like that. Synchronicities start to compound, or the coincidences, if you like, start to stack up. Hey, I'd say we get out there and be all about it. And maybe no sooner you get down to roll your dice, this individual turns and you see on the side of that construction hat, hey, maybe it's a fox. Yeah, maybe it's the name of their company, right? And that individual, maybe they say, well, you know what? I got a special treat in store for you here on your birthday, my birthday too. Why don't you come along? And you know what? You see that fox, maybe any kind of concern you might have of going with a stranger, it might go out the window, all right? And you get in the truck, you know what? Maybe that individual takes you to that very first place that you had to step past because it was locked up, right? Maybe they open it up to go in, and it happens to be like a construction site, an old building. Go up in this building up to the top there, and you get a view of the very same IRS building. And this individual brings out one of those little T handles, and they go, why don't you light up this candle? It's both our birthday. I'm going to give you the honors. So what's that? They let you blow up the IRS building. That's right. Happy birthday. All right. It all came into pass. That's right. So in any event, I know it's not apt to go down that kind of way for you, but you know what? You never know. So in any event, that's synchronicity for you in a nutshell. A little bit harebrained, like I said, but I think you get the idea. So get out there, see, taste, touch, smell, maybe intuit a little bit of the magic, and you're apt to understand why I bring it up. All right, let's dive in with your birthday read. That's why you're here. Your month is February. Your day is the 16th. Your sign is 26 to 28 degrees Aquarius of the Aquarius Pisces cusp period specifically. And your quality and element is fixed air. All right, February 16th, the day of animation. Those born on February 16 are spirited individuals, courageous and demonstrative, who bring life to whatever they take part in. They admire spontaneity and dislike plotting, measured, or constrained behavior. Also, they instinctively recognize that flexibility is at the essence of life, and that hardness and stiffness and inability to change presages that which dies away. The themes of birth, rebirth, foundation, and innovation, in short, beginnings of all kinds, are central to their lives. However, once something has been brought into existence, it may well need to be maintained. And here a problem arises, namely the fact that when things are not going well, February 16 people can grow very discouraged, and perhaps unwilling or unwilling to go on. Or unable or unwilling, rather. But though they are not long-suffering individuals, concluding a relationship, a job, or life process can also be very painful for them, or the simple reason that they are not the most skilled at bringing things to a close. And this is particularly true when it is a process or endeavor which they themselves have created or implemented. It is therefore important that February 16 people find the most graceful way to effect change in their lives, whether bowing out of a job or ending a relationship. And they are quite capable of quitting endeavors abruptly or simply getting up and leaving right in the middle of things, especially if they find they feel themselves powerless to make a meaningful difference. And those born on this day may well be correct in their appraisal of a losing proposition and the need to move on, but can benefit by keeping the bridges they cross standing, not for the purpose of going back, but perhaps to allow for past associations to be part of their future. In February 16, people must learn to round off some of their rough edges and to not bring fluency and grace to what they are. And not only, rather, to bring fluency and grace to what they do, but also to who they are as well as people and how they interact with others. In February 16, people display a positive orientation toward life and much evidenced in their love of children and animals. That which is uncomplicated, honest, and direct is greatly admired by them. And those born on this day usually have a fine balance of masculine and feminine qualities, and consequently can be equally close and comfortable with both men as well as women. And to the extent that friends and associates remain in touch with the life principle, February 16 people can be very accepting of them, regardless of their background, class, or politics. Yet, on the other hand, those born on this day can be hard on individuals who, in their eyes, are acting dictatorially, condescendingly, or arbitrarily, particularly in regard to weaker living things. And in such a situation, their protective instincts can flare up abruptly in anger. And though in general these strong reactions to injustice may be warranted, February 16 people may have to be careful not to go too far when expressing them. All right, quite the otherwise complicated birthday breakdown for me to get through, it would seem. So hopefully me cracking myself up in the middle of it wasn't too disjarring in its own record. All right, so in any event, I found this one particularly interesting outside my inability to necessarily get through it in a direct manner. But that said, I like to provide a little bit of a commentary on such things. These Aquarius days, let me tell you, have given me no uncertain amount of a challenge ahead of myself. So let's dive in a little bit of a breakdown, see if I can rectify the situation for you, and perhaps just bring about some of the things I found of interest and maybe make some connections with days previous, maybe just the period in general, so we can maybe explain a few of the things that came up in the read. Don't know if I'll necessarily be able to do that, but hey, that's the intention. So let's get into it, see what we see. February 16th, the day of animation. You're spirited individuals who bring life to their endeavors with courage and in animated ways. All right, and you're said to hate restriction and otherwise stiff behavior. So as advocates of spontaneity, you are also said to see flexibility and as a key fundamental to life. So there's a bit of a dynamic versus static paradigm that's ultimately speaking to fundamental themes of beginnings. And the reading claims for a rather deep examination of what I'm guessing are your core values, which is a stark deviation from what the readings tend to concern. That's to say there's a seeming mythos baked into this particular day, or a set of beliefs that are prevalent in the culture. At least it would seem. All right. It's also it's just because it sounded so idealistic and almost romantic as they kind of preloaded it in the birthday. Having said that, the reading claims when and if things should take a turn or particularly upset this dynamic, it may have a devastating effect on you. As you may not be particularly skilled at bringing things to the easiest of conclusions. But if you aren't long-suffering individuals, I'm left to wonder how much of an effect this ultimately has on you. For a bit of a seeming disconnect, it would seem, between those two juxtaposing ideas. But I can totally understand such things if you find yourself in a tricky spot with something that is all your own, which you've maybe invested no uncertain amount of what sounds like life force into. But the subject of bowing out gracefully also comes up and is recommended in these particular circumstances. As it's additionally claimed, you may be apt to quit or abandon things, specifically losing prospects abruptly, which I wouldn't have all guessed at considering the book's glowing lead up to your seeming philosophy. Which in its way maybe makes sense if themes of birth and new life are paramount in your life. And in a way, knowing it's time to leave, even if seemingly premature or even immature to the people who may feel like you left them kind of holding the bag, it might seem as a quite insightful or otherwise common sense approach for you specifically. All things considered, other people, if this dynamic within the birthday breakdown applies, other people might not understand that aspect because it's rather disjarring for others, as conditioned as we all are to this idea of sticking with things. But for you, that might not be baked into the recipe there, if you like. So that's why I say all things considered. But rough around the edges, in balance with male and female energy. You're also accepting of people, protective to the point of anger. Those are all additional qualities you're said to possess for what seems like some very reactionary kinds of idealistic traits, with a trademark kind of flair, you might say. And I'd say it certainly sets you apart from just about anybody else that's come up in at least this particular period in general. I'd say it's baked into a few other days that we've come across as I started doing these birthday breakdowns, but very interesting day to be sure. And they just keep getting progressively more complicated, it would seem, as I'm going on through the Aquarius period. So hopefully that spoke to you in no small part. No. These things can get complicated. Life can be complicated. Trying to, encapsulate an individual, kind of a hard ask to be sure. But hey, perhaps we can explain some of the things that came up in the breakdown as we move on to your numbers and your planets. All right, here we go. Those born on the 16th day of the month are ruled by the number 7, as 1 plus 6 equals 7, and by the watery planet Neptune. And those ruled by the number 7 sometimes fail to follow through on their ideas and in extreme cases can get out of touch with reality. Neptune, also the ruler of the upcoming sign Pisces, is the planet of dreams, fantasies, and religious feeling, which, coupled with the Uranian influence of their sign Aquarius, can spell instability for February 16 people. And those born on this day must resist the tendency of many ruled by the number 7 to throw caution to the winds where money is concerned. All right. Highly personalized this one for you. And I would argue they kind of have to, considering this is the Aquarius-Pisces cusp, where Neptune and Uranus kind of come into a co-rulership with one another. And then that kind of falls and bolsters or dampens the energy of the planet that rules the day. And in your case, that'd be Neptune again, so there's like a dual Neptune type thing going on. I don't know. Astrology is not my forte, but that seems to be what's going on. So let's dive in with what I had to say in the notes before I pretty much burn down everything I just explained. All right, let's go. Number 7 in the watery planet Neptune for traits of sometimes failing to follow through on your ideas and the potential to get out of touch with reality. Apparently. All right. Neptune is also the planet of dreams, fantasies, and religious feeling, but also said to be the ruler of people who are profound and diffuse, or not easy to understand or pin down. And it allows said individuals the ability to dissolve barriers and to exert a magnetic influence. But it is also common for discouragement and certain disconnects from others also, at least it would seem, specifically otherwise grounded individuals, those folks who don't have their head up in the clouds like some Neptune folks are kind of apt to do. So that happens to present on such days also. See, the planet Uranus, however, has explosive and erratic energy that's said to say come with idiosyncratic natures, rebellion, a desire to change the rules, and a tendency not to do things in the most straightforward of fashions. Uranus also shakes up and electrifies any given planet's effects, and as the reading claims, can spell instability for Neptune. So all told, even if astrology is taken out of the mix here, the collusion of these particular qualities taken together definitely seems to speak to the breakdown, rather. And to that end, it may explain why certain frustrations in your life may just so happen to manifest. So, pretty interesting numbers and planets today. I know I had to explain some of the more apt qualities that are baked into those particular planets, but I think once we did that, once we kind of expanded on that a little bit, it helped to kind of bring in the breakdown a little bit more aptly, I would say. So a little surprising they didn't include that as much of that in the breakdown for the numbers and planets, but they've been tending to do that here in the Aquarius period also. That said, they did personalize it for you a little bit, which I think they kind of had to do, like I said, considering they brought in the mix with that with the Aquarius Pisces cusp there. They couldn't quite do a copy paste job because that hasn't come up before. So in any event, that's been your numbers and planets. So let's move on to your tarot. That's right, the tarot card. Another one of the more eclectic of the New Age metaphysical ideologies. But hey, we don't have to take it home with us and start dealing out the cards to predict our future. So let's just dive into it, and then we can leave it here in the book. That's right. Sometimes we can make some connotations with the breakdown of the numbers and planets. Just adds more of a dynamic element to it. So let's get into it here. This 16th card, the major arcana, is the Tower, which in one version of the tarot shows both a king falling from a lightning-struck tower and the builder of the tower being killed by a blow to the head. The tower symbolizes the impermanence of not only physical structures, but also of relationships or vocations in our lives. The positive elements of this card include overcoming catastrophe and confronting challenges. However, the tower cautions against rising unjustifiably high and risking destruction at the hands of one's own invention. And thus, February 16 people are directly reminded by the tarot to beware of overreaching themselves. All right, hey, this is a little bit of a theme this period, the self-destruction. That's right, but hey, probably getting ahead of myself. Let's get into it here. The tarot, you got yourself the Tower card, all right, symbolizing impermanence in ways both physical and otherwise. And this can spell strengths for overcoming and confronting challenges, they said, but also speak to self-destruction. A bit of a through line, like I said. Very apt card, I would say, considering your commitment to passionately speaking and acting out against injustices. But in the same breath, maybe taking things a bit too far, all right? One could argue quitting abruptly with losing prospects factors into this to some extent, particularly if you burn bridges or leave on bad terms, I would say. All told, perhaps taking a beat before making knee-jerk decisions would totally append any, if not all, of such things. So, in any event, this wasn't the most personalized tarot entry, but in a lot of cases, they don't tend to do that. Here they did button it with a little bit of a suggestion, so you can't help but appreciate that. But that said, like I said, I thought it was a rather apt card. It spoke to the day quite a bit. That a lot of times they don't do that. In a lot of cases, we're able to kind of make some connections. But interestingly, I keep saying Aquarius has been kind of a tough period. Some of these tarot entries, it's kind of like trying to make them speak to the breakdowns, like trying to cram a puzzle piece that doesn't fit where it just doesn't go. So it's interesting that today, I would say this card spoke to you in no small part. So it's nice when that happens. We can make those connections, like I said. So in any event, that's been your tarot. So let's move on to your health. All right, your health. Those born on February 16 must be particularly careful to stay healthy because they are not so good at handling chronic disorders, which can wear them down. Since their mental state can be affected greatly by these conditions, they should have regular physical checkups. And as far as both exercise and diet are concerned, the natural tendencies of February 16 people usually keep them on course. And they enjoy being in motion, and therefore vigorous exercise is generally agreeable to them. And their appetites should be allowed to reign free over a broadly varied diet. And plenty of rest is recommended for February 16th people who may push themselves just a little bit too hard. All right, there's your health. Let's dive back into the notes. All right. It says you're not good at handling chronic disorders, all right? So you must be careful, as it's not easy to just up and abruptly quit your body, all right? But if it's your body that's quitting on you, well, that makes life increasingly difficult. All right, hey, just maybe an interesting way of looking at that paradigm so you can kind of be a little bit more what you call empathetic to the folks you might be leaving holding the bag. Yeah, just put it on you. Put yourself in the other side of the thing. Where did we go here? That's getting off track. It says you have natural tendencies to keep yourself on track with regard to diet as well as exercise, which quite honestly isn't often mentioned. And here in this Aquarius period, this particular dynamic with the health has been flip-flopping and vacillating all over the place. And they've been taking different and interesting tacks with everybody. It just can't seem to drill down on a through line. And I said the other day, maybe the through line is that this is the through line. They can't land on anything in particular. So it's been very interesting in approaching these health entries on any given day to that extent. All things, they mention vigorous exercise for you. And this is interesting because it's somewhat in line with this planetary shakeup. There's typical of these last few days. To say a lot of the days that usually get vigorous exercise have been getting moderate, vice versa. Neptune isn't typically a day that gets a vigorous exercise recommendation. So I'd say it's right in line with the idea that Uranus is shaking everything up and flipping the script, if you like, on all the different dynamics. It's also interesting that but I say that too because maybe it's also a recommendation so you can excise any aggressive energies that may get built up. Because that tends to be a little bit of a recommendation. Oftentimes we'll drill down on that with a Mars day because Mars has this god of war-like aggressive energy. And so typically they get an aggressive or a vigorous exercise to help with that. But interestingly, all the Mars days, none of them have had those recommendations in this period. So that lends a little bit of credence for me personally to that idea. That having been said, they tell you to get lots of rest. And this is something that's kind of typical of a Neptune day. But it's usually not at all associated with exercise. It's usually with the recommendation that they get their dream time in. All right, Neptune being the planet that rules over dreams and visions, they got to get their rest, get their dream time. So interesting that didn't come up for you, but hey, you know what? Things is different sometimes. That being said, they didn't drill down on any particular foods for your diet. They said you have a natural tendency to do what's right for yourself in those regards. But the Aquarius the body areas rather, are the circulatory system as well as the lower legs and the ankles, if you like. I mention this because Capricorn, their particular body areas were the circulatory system. And what was the other one? The skeleton. So they would often get recommendations of food that cut back on animal fats and dairy fats so that the veins don't get clogged with plaque and the like. And a few times they've mentioned foods here for Aquarius, it's been with the idea of heart health in mind. To say cut back on red meat. Also things like tobacco and alcohol, things to protect your heart. And so I thought I would bring that up for you just so you have something to think about. In respect to anything else, I also like to say get yourself a pair of compression socks there to kind of head such things off at the pass. Because the other thing that's come up in no small part has been warnings against embolism and stroke and varicoses. And so, hey, get yourself a pair of compression socks and two birds, one stone, especially if the other body area there is the lower legs and ankles. So give yourself a little support in that regard. Anyhow, that's been your health, so let's move on to some advice. All right, learn to deal with the downside and accept it as a fact, and then move on. And remember that everything has to come to an end sometime. Keep in mind that others may not be moving as fast as you physically or mentally. And take time to be more deliberate. All right. Couldn't quite make heads or tails of this one here for you, but let's approach it like I knew exactly what they were talking about. All right, here we go. They said learn to deal with the downside, accept, and move on. All right, see another through line for this period, no small part, accepting things and moving on. Though if you're able to quit abruptly, it's kind of weird that this comes up. That's why I say couldn't quite make heads or tails of it. Perhaps it's mentioned for those things that you aren't so apt to accept as losing propositions. So, maybe you never really accept it, even though you move on. Or maybe it hangs around in the background, bothers you. I don't know. But it's something to be mindful of. Figure out how to accept those things, and then be able to move on from it. Even if you quit it years ago. All right, maybe that's what they're saying. What else do they say here? But yeah, again, it's hard to understand what they're getting at, because you said you're good at quitting losing propositions. So I can't necessarily say why they brought it up. A bit of a disconnect there. They also say others may not be moving as fast as you, and this has come up on a number of previous occasions, on other days. So take time and be deliberate. They said it's fair to consider the limitations of others, I would say. Especially if they're trying to keep up, but they just keep falling behind because you're so much faster than they are. And I've often said, you know what, if they're giving their level best and you understand that, then I'd be okay with it. But it's for those folks who can't keep up because they aren't even trying, I would take a bit of an issue with. But yeah, just be mindful of the folks may not be as fast or mentally acute as you are. And you could lend them a little bit of what you call a little bit of a grace to that extent. Again, I don't know why this comes up, but that's what they brought up for you. What else do we have here? They spoke to being deliberate. Yeah, I already said that. If they are trying to keep up, I also get the idea that you care and you're mindful of inequalities, all right, at least as far as injustices are concerned. So maybe don't discount the smaller, seemingly trivial inequalities either. To say those folks who aren't able to keep up, right? Adjust your pace also. Because this came up the other day also. You may just be outrunning yourself and not just others. So maybe you just don't realize it yet. And so the idea of burnout starts to come up too. When maybe you outpace yourself, even though you've got all these things going, all these irons in the fire. Maybe you were able to handle as much, juggle as much, keep as many plates spinning in the air in times previous. Maybe you're not apt to do so right now, all right? So you got to measure yourself, keep a balance. And that's a through line theme for the entire book, it would seem. But in any event, like I said, a little bit of a disconnect with the advice today. I was having a hard time just making the connections. Maybe it makes complete sense to you, and I just missed it because I wasn't paying enough attention or not reading between the lines. But that's been your advice. That's all I'm trying to say. So your advice having been relayed, let's move on to your meditation. That's right. It's your birthday. You get something to reflect upon. All right, here we go. Death is as essential to life as life itself. All right. Not sure why they threw this in there for you, but hey, that seems to be a through line for the day, it would seem. Once again, death is as essential to life as life itself. All right, there's your meditation. It's your birthday. I'm not going to throw my own spin on it for you because you don't need it. It's just for you. And it would kind of defeat the purpose in that regard as a meditation, now wouldn't it? That having been said, your meditation in the can, let's move on to your strengths and your weaknesses. That's right, let's hold up the objective mirror and see where you got the girth and where you otherwise maybe a little more deflated, if you like. Your strengths, you're spirited, not spirited. You're life-oriented, and you're spontaneous. All right. Hey, I would say we knew those based on the idealized romantic first little bit of the entry and the breakdown. But your weaknesses, let's hold that objective mirror back up and flip it to the side that blows up your face. Maybe shows off the things a little more superficially insecure about within the metaphor there. That's right. Your weaknesses. You're abrupt, you're troubled, and you're eruptive. Oh, eruptive. I got a little bit of a hint of that, but not so pointedly, no. A lot of times we get into the strengths and weaknesses. I like to argue that our weaknesses can be strengths in and of themselves. It just depends on the situation as well as the individual. And I say that because a couple months back, there was one day where impulsive came up as a strength, but the very next day, it presented as a weakness. And it got me thinking, well, where's the disconnect? Why and how is a seemingly negative or positive thing the very next day the reverse? So it just got me thinking, well, maybe it just depends on the situation. I all too often like to argue also that your strengths are going to help you improve upon or maybe squash out your weaknesses if that's something you think you need to do for yourself. You're spirited, life-oriented, and spontaneous. I would say when it comes to trying to deal with your weaknesses, you're going to have the energy and the interesting approach to solving that particular issue. But your weaknesses, abrupt, troubled, and eruptive. I don't know how troubled is necessarily a strength, how you could turn that into a strength. But abrupt, you know what, sometimes you got to be able to snap people down, right? Or, make a decision. And it might not rest real well with a lot of other people because it was too abrupt. But you know what, sometimes we got to get to the quick, right? You got to cut to the quick if you like. Eruptive, hey, sometimes people need to be put in their place in order for them to get the idea. And a lot of folks can't do it. A lot of folks can't be abrupt, all right? So I would argue in a lot of cases those can also be strengths. But again, you have to pick the right situation with which to make it one, I would say. But that having been said, even if these are things you want to improve upon, I would say don't get rid of them altogether because they make us part of who we are. All right, strengths and weaknesses having been relayed, let's dive into those born on this day. When we get into those born on this day, something I like to do is approach it with the perspective of figuring out our passions. That's right, let's use it as a tool, because let's not just find out who shares our birthday. That can be interesting, but how can we take something from it? I think that's a perfect way to maybe start drumming up some inspiration to chase after our passions. And I say that because too often in life I get out in the world and meet individuals and ask them what they do, and more importantly, if they like it. And a lot of times they don't. But I think it's perfectly understandable because, you get out of school, you got to get the first job that comes into your life so that you can make ends meet. And at the very root of it, it probably has nothing to do with anything you like to do. But a lot of times in life, we don't even know what we like to do because we got to put time, work, and effort into figuring that out. And if you get into a full-time job, the end of the day comes, the end of the week comes, and you're just trying to rally for the next work day, we're not carving out time to figure out such things. So I think this is the perfect opportunity to, like I said, maybe start kindling up those fires there to figure out what our passions are. But if you already got your passions figured out, well, then the hat I'm not wearing is off to you. Let's just see who shares your birthday, all right? So let's dive into it. We start off with John McEnroe, the tennis star and ranked world number 1 for 4 years and a 4-time U.S. Open, 3-time Wimbledon champion. We also have Makoto, Machito, Makoto, a Cuban band leader and a singer. John Schlesinger, British film director of Midnight Cowboy and Marathon Man. We also have Francis Galton, a British founder of eugenics. It says the science of hereditary improvement through genetic control, as well as a meteorologist. And those are very two different studies, it would seem. We also have LeVar Burton, a TV and film actor, and it says Kuta Kente in the show Roots, and also was it Geordie LaForge in old Star Trek there, and he was part of that Reading Rainbow program. Hey, how about that? That's more book oriented. The president mentioned that. We also have Mario Pei, P-E-I, so I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that one. A linguist, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name. A linguist and a scholar of the story of the English language. We also have Robert Flaherty, a filmmaker and responsible for Nanook of the North, as well as Louisiana Story, also a cinematographer and producer, and often called the father of the documentary. We also have Edgar Bergen, a ventriloquist, famous for the dummy named Charlie McCarthy, and was also Candice Bergen's father. We have Sonny Bono, the singer of Sonny and Bono fame, or Sonny and Cher, rather. I get that mixed up. And also a politician. We have George Kennan, a scholar and diplomat, political scientist, and developed containment theory, and is responsible for dealing with the communist world. We also have Anthony Dowell, a British ballet dancer. We also have Elianu Inbal, a British-Israeli operatic conductor. And Max Bauer, a world heavyweight boxing champ and a film actor. We also have Geraint Evans, the names today are getting me, who was a Welsh concert and opera baritone. C.W. Ledbetter, perhaps? It's spelled Beats, I don't know. Ledbetter, a British theosophist, an occultist, and Annie Besant's colleague. We also have Philip Melanchthon, a Luther supporter, German humanist church reformer. We also have Van Wyck Brooks, a cultural historian. We also have Baron Trenck, 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 Prussian-Russian officer and writer, Jacobean revolutionary, and guillotined. And finally, John Corigliano, a composer. And the names today definitely mixed me up for sure. So let's put your things on my side to make up for it. It's not done in malice. It's just Hooked on Phonics isn't the best tool to pronounce names there. That having been said, I know it's a big-ass tall order to try and take inspiration or influence from other people's accomplishments. But hey, maybe me just putting the bug in your ear about as much help you stir up the fires and drive after a passion. Get you motivated to start figuring that stuff out for yourself. Because if there's anything I can wish for you on your birthday, it's that you're doing backflips out of bed to get on with your day and eager to jump into something that just excites you. All right. That having been said, that's those born on this day in the can. That essentially rounds out your birthday reading, except to say your season is winter, your sign once again is Aquarius, of the Aquarius Pisces cusp period specifically, and your quality and elements is fixed air. And this has been February 16th, the day of animation, all right, from the Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and you Stelfers. I have an affiliate link for this book down in the description if you're interested in picking up a copy. Save the hassle and type it in a browser there, and it's right above a personal message I'm leaving for the birthday boys and girls, ladies and gents there if you like, and if you're interested. But that having been said, the book having been relayed, not altogether all too important, because what is important here, that's right, wishing you a happy birthday, like I said at the top. So once again, happy birthday. But for everybody else who joined us, hey, I hope you enjoyed yourselves, took something from it, got some entertainment value out of me, getting things mucked up a little bit there. Do it once on occasion. That's what happens with the one shot, one takes. But hey, I hope to see you on your birthday read, all right? And lest I forget, that's right, your daily numbers. Get out there, let the universe show you it's with you on your path. I don't imagine you're apt to be able to blow up a building in a controlled demolition kind of circumstance. I think you tend to need a license for that, but here nor there. Who's to say? Who's to say? All right. Once again, I just want to wish you a happy birthday. Thank you for the pleasure of your time, and let you know it's been a privilege to share your birthday with you. It truly has. And sometimes these are difficult days to get the notes done for you, but I hope you appreciated it, took something of value from it at the very least. So if I can wish nothing else for you on your birthday, it's that too. So once again, happy birthday, and take care of yourselves.